All right, and we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Serverless Office Hours. Today with the CEO of Serverless, Austin Collins.
Hello, everyone.
And a very special guest, cloud guru, working at a cloud guru, Mr. John C. McKim.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little background?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm John. I work for A Cloud Guru as a software developer working on their platform. I've been working with serverless for about a year now. 6 months of that just for fun and to learn, and then the last 6 months with A Cloud Guru, which has been really exciting.
Nice. Well, I'm glad that we can get you on because you've made a number of very interesting projects that I've seen. You're super active in the serverless space, and really one of our goals with this show is to get the brightest minds on to talk about basically what's happening out there in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So without, sorry, go ahead.
It's a bit of a delay coming to Australia, but yeah, I worked on some fun things recently, and a while ago I tried to serverless my garden, which had some success. And also at reInvent last year, we entered a competition, their Alexa competition, and we built a serverless chaos monkey to start and destroy servers, which was pretty fun. And recently I built an emoji face swap tool, which if you used recognition, so if you uploaded someone's photo to this system, it would replace their face with an emoji that represented the emotion of that face.
Wow.
As well as there was one other thing. Oh, we've been working on a plugin. This is an actual useful tool, not just a silly one, but a plugin to help run your Lambda functions offline, which I'm really excited about that one.
Nice.
Yeah, I got so many questions for you about all these projects, because I think you've been one of, if not the most prolific kind of plugin author, experimental project author, content author for a long time. And I've never had a chance to sit down with you and just ask you about all these projects. I have a lot of questions about these in particular. Maybe I'll just ask a couple right now. This gardening monitoring service, I think this was was this your first big one? I think that was your first big serverless project, which really got a lot of attention from what I recall.
Yeah, it was quite good. I did some talks on it, and it went particularly well. People were particularly interested in GraphQL plus serverless. It was kind of two hot topics going on at the same time, and yeah, that was fun to work on and fun to learn with.
What for the viewers out there? Give us a little background. What is the garden project actually doing? There's an IoT component, correct?
Yeah. So I was wanting to learn about serverless, and this was about a year ago. There wasn't much writing or content about it, and the only thing I'd heard about it was Sam, my now boss from A Cloud Guru, doing a meetup presentation on it. And so I thought, well, what's a realistic problem? Because I'd played around with it, made some kind of basic projects, but to really understand a technology, you actually have to kind of try it and see what it can do in a larger system. So I loved gardening. I still do, but the garden is since gone. But my problem was that I never watered it. And so I wanted a way for my garden to tell me when it needed to be watered, rather than me to have to go and check on it all the time. So this backend, which integrated with the AWS IoT service, which would send, we would receive messages from this device, and that would then send notifications to Slack and power a little dashboard that I could use to monitor my garden in real time. I only actually finished the serverless side of things. I struggled with some of the IoT device side of things for quite a while, but it was a really, really good way of breaking down a system into different services, playing with some new technologies like GraphQL and Lambda and all that, and just a good way to learn.
Were you using any sensor technology in that?
Yeah, so that's the bit I never quite got going. I bought this device called a I can't even remember the name of it, but my problem was that the AWS IoT service requires TLS 1.2, and this device only had support for TLS 1.1. And so that was my first problem. And then I went and got myself a Raspberry Pi, and I tried getting Node to run on a Raspberry Pi with not very much success. Then I decided I had to switch to Python. And by the time I'd got to that point, Greengrass was sort of rumored and then announced, and I was like, well, I really just kind of want to write lambdas on these things anyway, so I'm going to wait till Greengrass goes GA to finish this project.
Cool. I've got a plant in my apartment. It's only one plant. I never remember to water the thing. I feel so bad. But I'll have to fork that project, or let me know when you figured it out. There's so many people that are writing Lambda functions to notify them, to remind them to do all types of different things. And it's pretty cool. I think it touches on the broader theme of this, one of the broader themes of this technology, and that's automation in general. I think serverless functions, event-driven architectures specifically, are going to be something that power the automated future more than any of us kind of realize. A lot of people are talking about devices and machine intelligence and stuff, machine learning. But I think just having this serverless compute service and having it be event-driven is going to be like the backbone, the foundation of all this automation.
Yeah, definitely.
I love this. This is like stuff like this where I see people automating their tasks away. They're like human, easily repeatable stuff away. I think it's like some of the most fascinating things. And anyway, so cool job. I got to check it out because my plant is dying probably at this very moment.
I totally agree with that sentiment. I think one of the first projects, particularly large organizations should look at, is event-driven security, looking at how they can use Lambda to automate their monitoring and security of their environments. And that's just a nice way to ease into the whole idea of Lambda and functions and that kind of thing. And yeah, get sort of your head around it before perhaps trying a different project or building some kind of customer-facing thing with Lambda.
Yeah, starting with something small and then kind of letting it spread throughout the organization. I like that a lot. Speaking about an organization, A Cloud Guru, famously has a very serverless kind of focused stack. That's something that you work on personally. Can we dive in a little bit more about the different serverless components of how A Cloud Guru actually operates?
Yeah, so A Cloud Guru was created in the space of Sam's annual leave, which I think was about 3 weeks. I think late in 2015, I believe. And it started life as just Firebase and Angular front end and a few Lambda functions on the back end. And we still have those components in there today, but as the team's grown and as the project's grown, we're sort of changing some of how that works to be focused on more of a microservices architecture and more services inside AWS. So we use, as I said, we use Firebase. We've got heavy use of AWS. We also use services like Netlify, Algolia, Auth0, all these great kind of either backend as a service or cloud providers. And we're moving sort of from Firebase to store our data into AWS with DynamoDB. So we're now making really heavy use of DB, Kinesis Streams, Redshift. I think that's most of it, and on that we're using Node and GraphQL for the front end. It's really interesting to work on, particularly the way it's evolved from sort of this kind of serverless project to now a more microservices structure.
And you probably can't say this, but I'm just going to throw it out there anyway. Like, how expensive is it to run a Cloud Guru?
Our biggest cost is CloudFront. It is about 90% of our cost, which is understandable because we stream videos through there. Our Lambda functions, they cost us for less than $5 a month. We're just over the free tier, and it's very cheap. It's not very expensive to run a Cloud Guru, but yeah, I think the cost of running the services isn't as compelling as the time it takes to develop services, because I think for a lot of tech businesses, not any, the cost of their people and their employees are one of the most expensive, is the most expensive component. And optimizing for that rather than say the cost of your AWS bill is probably the way to go. And I think serverless is like a bigger enabler of that. People talk about how cheap Lambda is and that kind of thing, but it's really about, how quickly can I set up a stack that, stores something in, a database and then triggers off that to then go and process it in some other way. These kind of interesting systems that are just, not impossible, but hard to build yourself.
Right. So how does that work? Like in a Cloud Guru, are you guys kind of working individually on projects or like smaller teams? Where, like, as you mentioned, doing this in the past, like building a bigger system like that would have taken a pretty large team. But I would imagine, these are smaller efforts that can get done faster, right? Yeah.
So there's we only have about 5 devs now, and one of those is focused almost entirely on a front-end component, and then the others we kind of work between both, and we've got these separate services, and each of us kind of owns one of these serverless services. It doesn't mean someone else can't go work on it, but it kind of means we hold most of the knowledge about it. Originally, it was just one serverless project, a 0.5 project, and we've been breaking that out into the different serverless services. It works quite well. We don't really conflict with each other too much. There is some times where, one of us might change stuff and another person has to go and adjust, but that happens with any project. And it happens particularly because we're still trying to work out the best way to do these things. It's not like there is any, best practices built on 5 years of expertise. It's kind of just working out as we go.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, it works nicely. Just the whole idea of owning your own kind of microservice and sort of building on top of that. And as the team grows, we'll keep doing that.
You guys are moving away from, originally using Firebase, because that's interesting. That's one of the things that I noticed in your guys' stack.
Yeah, we really like Firebase, and Firebase was something that enabled Sam to get going really, really quickly. And interestingly, Firebase has functions now, but we are moving away from it, partly because of the minimizing the number of services that we use. Using a lot of different services can get you going really quickly, but then as you grow out the team, I sat down with one of our new employees yesterday, and it took us like 6 hours to set up his environment. And we really need to make that a lot quicker, because as we hire more people, I don't want to be spending 6 hours of my time environments, but then changing environments. So by going sort of more into AWS where it makes sense, then we can just use CloudFormation to kind of stamp out these environments a lot more easily. As well as there's some things about DynamoDB that we kind of like better in terms of secondary indexes. They're really good. Firebase doesn't really have that as a concept, so you're constantly denormalizing and rewriting your data. And a lot of the time as we moved towards Algolia anyway, we were reading from Algolia and not necessarily reading from Firebase. So we kind of looked at Firebase and we're like, well, where does this make sense? We can't really query on it like Algolia or Redshift or something like that. We can't, we have to denormalize this data, you know, perhaps we should move it all into AWS and store and you take advantage of those secondary indexes, like use the NoSQL when it really makes sense to, as kind of like the primary source of truth and really fast just get objects or simple queries. And then from the stream, send any records we need off to say Algolia or Redshift, where we can have kind of these separate views that we query on and do sort of, more intelligent data access through there.
Gotcha.
I hope all that makes
John,
sense.
Certainly. Well, I've got a question about that. It's interesting that you want to reduce the number of services because right now it's taking too long to set up, and it sounds like it's just hard to manage kind of the life cycle of a lot of services together. But the way people describe serverless is they also describe it as serviceful, to manage services together. And we think about this problem a lot because we're making this application framework, and like one of our challenges is to help people kind of leverage as many managed services as possible. I think that's kind of like that's like the broad goal of the framework, right? It's like how can we let people manage use all the managed services they want to use and kind of manage the life cycle of using those services together to create an application. And hear that you're consolidating because that management problem, from what I've gathered from what you said, hasn't really been solved yet. And we want to solve this because, you know, first off, developers should have options. They should be able to leverage whatever they want to leverage to make their serverless, their serviceful application or architecture. And so we see, you know, new Lambda competitors come out. Those new Lambda competitors, like Google, for example, are inside of platforms that have other really high-value services that everyone wants to use, like Google's machine learning stuff, for example. In addition to that, we're also seeing smaller vendors enter the market, like FaunaDB, which is an alternative to DynamoDB, which is exciting because it's great to have an alternative to DynamoDB, which DynamoDB, I just want to see some more competition there. I don't think DynamoDB has been innovating very, very quickly over the past few years. There's a few features that I've personally been waiting for I haven't seen yet. So I'm excited about the competition. Also, these other services, these other smaller vendors who've been around for a while, like Auth0, Algolia, offering other, you know, serverless-like solutions. I guess my question to you is, do you really want to consolidate into like less services, or if we were able to solve that management problem better, would that be more interesting to you, so that you could leverage all the things that you actually want to leverage to help you, you know, solve the problems that you are setting out to solve? Yeah,
definitely. I'm definitely a fan of serviceful. It totally makes sense, and it's what we use. It's just a matter of picking and using the right services for the right job, and automation. And part of our problem possibly was related to using an older version of Firebase, and some of these things we probably could have kept using Firebase, but the automation part within CloudFormation and having that CloudFormation stack was pretty compelling. Plus those other reasons, you know, about the DynamoDB streams and how sort of, it just didn't really make sense for us anymore. Like, we're big fans of Auth0, Algolia. Those are other really great services that we will definitely continue to use. I don't see us really consolidating back into AWS in those particular areas. And certainly managing those is not impossible, but it's not exactly the easiest because they exist outside this CloudFormation world. So one thing I really need to find the time to delve into is custom CloudFormation resources, and perhaps like the ability to create, say, a Auth0 client or something like that automatically as part of creating a stack. But it's not only that, it's getting the secrets and the secrets management into your into your services and where they're needed. That's quite an interesting but tricky piece. We're making use of KMS now, which is great. It helps with some of that, but yeah, working out how to slot all those things together and configure them, it's certainly a tricky problem to solve. And at the moment, we're doing it quite manually. I would love a push button create environment, but yeah, it's hard when you're using these other services.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's actually a live question we have from Jason Clark. Basically, around how you guys manage secrets. That is a problem. One of the things that another project you worked on was pretty interesting. It was a human generator to basically like scaffold out serverless functions. But how are you guys managing secrets right now and sharing those, across a team?
Yeah, so that generator probably needs to be updated with what we're using now. When we created that generator, it was pre-Lambda environment variables, and that helped us solve the problem then, because the generator used a plugin that I created to create a .m file that we could load up, and there was a couple of shell commands that we used to encrypt and decrypt variables that we stored in Travis. But now with environment variables as a sort of first-class citizen of Lambda, we've created a new plugin called ServerlessCrypt. And what we do is we can then run ServerlessCrypt encrypt on the command line and pass it a value, which will go create go call KMS and encrypt that value with KMS. And then we can put that into our serverless framework config and just check that in safely. And then when our Lambda function initializes, we've got another package that we use to decrypt that and pass that across, which is sort of, I think that's the best way to do it at the moment. I can't really think of a better way. I know KMS, I know environment variables encrypt with KMS behind the scenes. But my problem with how it currently works is that if you just rely on that, then you still have all these secrets in plain text in all your CloudFormation templates, and they're just visible in the console. And so we wanted, or I particularly wanted, to kind of minimize where these secrets were actually in plain text, and I didn't want them littered through our CloudFormation templates in our history and in our repo in particular. But I wanted them to be able to be checked in. So KMS works really nicely there. And we do that once outside of the handler, so we don't have to reload it, call KMS every time the Lambda is invoked. It's cached, which is important as well.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So Jason, I hope that answered your question. So that kind of brings up another thing I wanted to chat with you about, which is the serverless ecosystem. We're still, relatively the adoption phase where things aren't as easy as they need to be, like managing secrets, like managing multiple services, etc. But what are some other things? I think you wrote a post on this. Just things that you'd like to see how the serverless ecosystem can evolve today. Yeah.
So I think clearly the provider space is very interesting. I mean, AWS has got a huge head start. The others sort of are paying attention and doing stuff, but you kind of wonder how much effort they're putting into it, and it would be probably a mistake if they don't put a full effort into these offerings. I think that space is very interesting, but I think the main two spaces are kind of like, as you say, from now, it's like the tooling and the education and the awareness. I think that the tooling and what you guys have done have plugged a huge gap. Like a year ago, building serverless stuff, or when Sam started building serverless stuff with the first version of A-Cloud Guru, there was no framework, or Jaws might have existed then, but I don't know if he was aware of it. And then with 0.5 of the serverless framework, that was a huge leap forward. There was obviously some not so nice things about it, but then 1.0 came out, and for me, that was just like, this is the tool that I want to use. This is filled a huge gap. There's
You might have just lost John.
We lost John.
Live internet. Let me send him a message. I think the serverless framework has basically made this stuff. Otherwise, you're going in there manually wiring stuff together. Hey, John.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that.
There you are.
I hit my keyboard. But yeah, the tooling space is really interesting. There's definitely, we're at kind of level 1 of tooling, and the really sharp edges are all smoothed off. For me, from now on, it's about how can we build out things like the plugin ecosystem to be a lot nicer and provide those more customized gaps. Like someone has a particular way that they want to do something that might not be relevant to everyone, but they should and could go build a plugin to fix that. Some offline tooling, which I've been working on, would be some really solid offline tooling, which would be really nice. I'm hoping to kind of get that Simulate plugin that we're working on to a point where people can just go and start and sort of dev offline really easily. And yeah, the education and awareness bit, I think that's the most important next step. It's a matter of sort of getting past all those initial questions of what is serverless, or what are these function things. I build my application as a big whole. How can I make it out of functions, as well as once you've got past that and people are interested, how do people then go and build a service, something kind of small, and then how do you go build a larger application? Some of those questions sort of need to be discussed and sort of looked at as a community. Sharing architectures, I think, will be really important, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, but there isn't really best practices and that kind of thing yet, which I'd like to see evolve.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking about the offline work that you're doing, do you want to dive into that project a little bit? Explain to everyone watching what you're working on.
Yeah, I haven't actually, John. I haven't seen it yet, and I was just trying to do some research on it when I found this other gentleman named John McKim on Wikipedia. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, that doesn't look quite like me.
Yeah.
All right, I thought that was you for a second there. Anyway, but yeah, I was just looking over the project right now. I know that it's gotten a lot of attention. Anyway, explain it. Let us know what it's all about. So,
quite a while ago now, a guy I know in Brisbane, Gert, who works at a company, a ticketing company, and they're using a mixed stack. It's pretty interesting what they're doing. They're using some sort of microservices in .NET on more traditional stack, as well as they've got some Lambda stuff as well. They're doing a bit of both. And we're talking about, the ecosystem and the framework and stuff. And we'd both used serverless offline, and we'd both been really frustrated with it. That project was a fork of serverless serve, and it was really good. And then sort of we used it a bit more and started hitting kind of the limitations of its architecture, basically. And the main problem we had with it was that it ran your functions in the node process that you were using to run your serverless commands, basically, which may or may not be the right version for Lambda. It's not going to have the correct environment variables. It doesn't allow you to like make cross-service function calls, which is really important for us. And so we kind of thought about it and we're like, well, improve and refactor that code base. There's a lot of history on how that code base is structured and the architecture. We thought, let's just start again. So we built this project where we're simulating Lambda and API Gateway as two separate pieces. That means that with Lambda, you can use like the AWS SDK to interact with this simulation, which I think is really nice. And the Lambda piece invokes functions using Docker. So they're contained, we control the environment, we can allocate memory, we can set timeouts and do that kind of thing. That Docker project is made by Michael Hart, who built LambCI. It's a really good project. And then working with that, we've built an API gateway simulator that then goes and calls that Lambda service via HTTP, which means it's much closer to what you would actually be experiencing if you deployed it to the cloud. It's got a lot of bugs. We're working on them, and it's getting there. It's coming a long way, and as we sort of use it more and more with the A Cloud Guru project, we'll find probably a lot of those issues. Yeah, I'm really keen to get that going. We recently started using what did we add? We added a Docker compose step, so you could spin up other AWS services like S3 and DynamoDB and Kinesis locally using a project called Moto or something like Dynalite or Kinesis Lite or something like that. So you can get a fuller offline experience before you have to sort of go to the cloud.
John, when you emulate API Gateway locally, are you just emulating the Lambda proxy integration?
No, we're emulating both the Lambda proxy and the Lambda integration. I wish we were just emulating Lambda proxy because it would certainly be a lot easier. But we do use Lambda sometimes, and people do use Lambda integration. So we have created the velocity contexts and doing things like that, which is we basically looked at how Serverless Offline did it and took a lot of what they did and used it there because, yeah, it's not exactly the simplest thing. But the hardest thing about building this simulator or any simulator really is working out how API Gateway actually works. Mm-hmm. And reflecting that, because yeah, the subtle differences are what can cause issues when someone, say, goes from the simulator to the cloud. I should say, and this project and the offline tooling, it should never replace testing on the cloud because you always need to run it through on the actual services to be sure it's going to work. And it should never replace unit testing either. It's just kind of another tool to help you speed up your dev. If you're doing like a web application on the front end, it's a really good way to make small changes and then see that reflected in the front end before going and deploying it to the cloud, which on Australian internet can take a little while.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So what does that look like for you guys? You guys are doing unit testing locally, then doing these like local offline tests, then doing live integration tests with the stuff you're building?
Yeah, we're building out more and more unit tests. Unit tests is kind of like our foundation. I think of it as a pyramid. So unit tests at the bottom, our goal is like 100% coverage there. As we're actively sort of working on things, we can use the Simulate plugin to quickly test things and actually see how sort of some of the pieces fit together, basically. And then we deploy it to the cloud and make sure it runs up there. We have some automated integration tests for our really important pieces. We should do more of that. But back to the serviceful issue is it's kind of difficult to do, especially when we've got a shared test environment. We kind of need to work on our automation a bit better. Ideally, we'd love to be able to create an environment, run a whole bunch of tests against it, and destroy that entire environment in one go. But that's just not possible right now. So we've got this shared environment, which means that we somehow, and we don't do this, but we somehow need to lock on using that shared environment, because right now, every now and again, when we run integration tests, two will try to run at the same time, or they'll update over the top of each other and things will conflict. So that's a bit of an interesting issue. But yeah, for us, it's a pyramid. Unit tests are the best thing you can do. And honestly, they're not that hard when you're just building small functions. They become a lot easier, and then from there, the integration piece, less and less of those.
Cool. So switching gears a little bit, I wanted to ask you, there's so much really good like serverless content out there. Obviously, A Cloud Guru creates a ton of it. But what are some of your other favorite resources or people you follow on Twitter to keep up with what's happening in the space?
Yeah, so I mean, I think other people have mentioned this Slack before, but the Serverless forum Slack that created by Matt Weigel is really good. There's a lot of people in there. You can jump in and ask questions. There's some really good people out there. I use Twitter a lot. I follow like Ben Keogh, Ryan Brown, some of the AWS guys like Brian Liston, and I think they do a good podcast as well. There's quite a lot of people. If you go look at the speakers list for ServerlessConf, I'd go through that list and follow them all on Twitter, because yeah, there's a lot of people talking about it, and that's a good way to get there. But the main way I get sort of information is by reading different blogs on Medium is my biggest avenue, and I really like Medium because it has a large variety of content on there, from people just getting started to people writing sort of thoughtful pieces. And if you just follow the serverless tag, there's a lot of good stuff there.
I think you should also follow John McKim's Medium blog. You are one of the most prolific authors, and your stuff is so good. And you've been writing content on this for I think over a year now. But
Yeah.
I recommend it. I check out this blog all the time. I'm a follower.
I've been blogging a little bit less lately. It's hard to find all the time for all these different things, but I'm trying to focus down and sort of maybe do a little bit less frequently, but more like project based and interesting posts. The last two that I wrote, they were pretty good. I quite liked doing those and doing it that way.
Nice. Yeah.
Cool.
I use your the emoji project in like almost every presentation that I'm giving. It's like a really good example of how you can use infrastructure events to do things.
Yeah.
And people seem to like it. It always gets a chuckle. So kudos.
Yeah. That one, I laughed so much while I was building that. It's the silliest idea to explain something, but it was a lot of fun making it.
Nice. So you just mentioned ServerlessConf. That's happening. It's coming up in Austin. You wanna give us a little bit more background of what people can expect and how they can register?
Yeah. So you can register by going to austin.serverlessconf.io. It's really like just a coming together of people that are passionate and interested in serverless. It started probably about a year ago now in New York. And from there, we've had some in Tokyo, some in London, and we're excited to be coming back to the US. There's a lot of good submissions. I'm part of the speaker selection, and we've got over 120 submissions by a lot of good people. And Pete's the main organizer. We always feel a bit sad about having to say no to all these good talks. But yeah, we've got a great sort of representation by the vendors. AWS, Azure, and Google are all coming along, as well as IBM, INIO, and other providers like PubNub. That's off the top of my head. And yeah, it's going to be a good time. There's going to be lots of good presentations. Austin's going to be doing the keynote, or one of the keynotes, which will be good to have. And yeah, it should be really fun. Oh, and we're doing workshops as well. So if you want to get hands-on and say try some of these things on the first day, there's five different workshops, I believe. I'm running one of those. We're going to be looking at Slack bots and using serverless to create a Slack bot. I don't want to give away what we're doing quite yet, but it's going to be another little fun project, I think. Hopefully should give people a bit of a laugh out of it. There's early bird tickets are still on sale. I think that'll be closing off soon. And it'll just be a good time. Come and meet lots of people. Yeah. There'll be a party and just talk to all those smart people.
I'm excited to hear Austin speak in Austin. I can't wait for all the Austin jokes. They're just gonna flow.
I've heard them my entire life.
But yeah, awesome. Cool. All right, so we're running short on time here. Do you have any other things that you would want to shout out or point people to, John?
Definitely just come have a look at A Cloud Guru. We're building out our serverless courses. We've got one released recently, and we'll have another one released very soon that's going to look at actually using the serverless framework and building Slack bots with that, as well as we've got more in the pipeline. I think if you want an accessible way to kind of learn and get your hands on something, some of these courses are great. And if you want to get certified and learn about other things outside of serverless, that's our bread and butter too. So check us out.
Yeah. I will highly, I will second that. And we bought the package deal with A Cloud Guru, have all the courses. I've been going through them one by one. The DynamoDB course is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So much good content in there. I think if you buy it, it's so cheap. You guys pass on an insane amount of cost savings, I guess, because your infrastructure is so cheap to the people trying to learn. I think it was $20 or something for 20 hours of content. It's incredible. So I think you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, no, I'm really sort of proud of being able to provide good quality courses at that price point, because I think accessible education is really important. So it's very low risk to go buy a course and get started, and then educate yourself, because it's always worth educating yourself, investing in yourself. So definitely check it out. Yeah.
It's not only the content too. You guys have a forum, you can ask questions. It's just the whole kind of package, and just me knowing about how it's kind of built in a serverless way. It's I get there's a special place in my heart for what you guys are doing. So
thanks.
Hey, John, I got one last question for you before we sign off here. Is there anyone in the serverless community that has a better mustache than you?
I'm trying to think.
The answer is no. Pretty sure the answer is no.
No, I don't think. I'm not sure if anyone has a mustache like this that I know of. Though I know lots of people with great mustaches. But I like how Ben Keogh dresses. I think he's one of the coolest serverless gurus out there.
He's pretty cool. I met him. Yeah, cool guy for sure. All right, look, John, thank you so much. Keep rocking. You've been a community member, for over a year now. You're putting out the best stuff, the most interesting stuff, I think. And looking forward to seeing you in ServerlessConf Austin. We'll hang out, have a good time.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to see you there. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for everybody for watching. Stay tuned for the next Serverless Office Hours coming at you, I believe, in 2 weeks. All right.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.